Let's move to the Reserve Bank decision today. As Governor Michele Bullock said today, the narrow path is right now getting narrower. The RBA statement has a large number of changes, but there are two that we think are key for you to understand. One is this: the board remains resolute in its determination to return inflation to target and will do whatever is necessary to achieve that outcome. You can see here it says effectively. The other one is that inflation remains above target and is proving persistent. So there's changes in language in both of these, but that whatever is necessary to achieve that outcome. Well, Ed Boyd has not long ago got out of the press conference held by Reserve Bank Governor Michele Bullock. And Ed, the key message seems to be the narrow path getting narrower.
Yeah, Ross, I'm standing where Governor Bullock was just a short time ago in the room at the RBA's new head office here in Chifley Tower. The narrow path getting narrower, let's just unpack that a little bit. When you refer to that, the Reserve Bank is doing something a little different to other central banks around the world. It hasn't lifted interest rates as aggressively as its peers. It's really hoping to keep the cash rate at this lower level to reduce the fact that unemployment hasn't risen much. So unemployment in Australia is quite a bit lower than other countries around the world at 4%. It's close to those 50-year lows. So we've got a strong jobs market. But the issue for Australia with not lifting rates as aggressively as its peers is that inflation is sticking around much longer than anticipated. In fact, you mentioned the statement today from the board of the Reserve Bank. I think the word inflation is mentioned 24 times, so it's obviously front of mind for the Governor of the Reserve Bank and the board that she has with her. But just on that narrow path topic, this was in the opening spiel from Governor Bullock. Just have a listen to the way she paints the picture of where we're currently sitting with our economy and where things could be going over the next 6 to 8 months.
We still think we're on the narrow path, but it does appear to be getting a bit narrower. We need a lot to go our way if we're going to bring inflation back down to the 2% target range. The board does need to be confident that inflation is moving sustainably towards target, and it will do what is necessary to achieve that outcome.
So in the press conference, one other point that was made is that the Reserve Bank Board considered raising interest rates at this meeting, but it did not consider cutting interest rates. So that sort of tells you something about the thinking of the Reserve Bank Board right now.
Yeah, that tells you the inside story of what the Reserve Bank Board is contemplating. They did contemplate lifting interest rates today at this two-day board meeting that has just wrapped up. There was a lot of speculation around rates basically just being on hold for a long period of time, and people are hoping for the bank to start cutting rates, but clearly that's not going to happen anytime soon, with Governor Bullock confirming that there was no opportunity. They did not consider at all cutting the cash rate today. But the press conference today, there was a good 20, 25 journalists in the room as usual, but I felt like the vibe from Governor Bullock might have been a little different this time around. She was a little quicker, faster with her answers to people. She didn't elaborate as much, give out as much detail, as much information as she had previously. For example, there were a couple of questions about state and federal budgets and whether they're expansionary. She didn't really want to get involved in anything like that, providing any guidance to government. So she was pretty tight-lipped with her statements. We're not going to rule anything in or out. That's basically the key message that she said the past few press conferences. She did say that again today. But here's my exchange with Governor Bullock. I was probably the fourth or fifth person to ask a question just around how many more inflation reads they want to see before they get confident that inflation is heading in the right direction. It's worth noting the June quarter inflation CPI, that'll come out at the end of July, which means the August board meeting is the next board meeting for the RBA. That's when they'll have a better guidance on where inflation's sitting in our economy and where the services price inflation is finally starting to ease. How many more inflation rates, do you think you're going to need to see before you think about potentially reducing interest rates? I note the next meeting's in August. There's one economist suggesting that could be a live meeting. They
wanted to make the point that they are alert to the potential upside risks, and there are a couple of things that haven't made them jump the gun. They've left things on hold, but there are a couple of things. One was the monthly CPI in April. It was a bit higher than expected. It's only a monthly CPI. It doesn't give you a full picture of things. The consumption things were a bit on the upside as well. As I said, a bit hard to know how to interpret it, but just a few little alerts to suggest we might need to remain vigilant.
So had you been in each of these press conferences that Michele Bullock has given, you sense that she's tightening up with some of her answers. Does that give you any impression about either some of the debate taking place at the Reserve Bank board level or indeed some of the tough decisions that might be coming down the track for the Reserve Bank itself?
Look, I think it's those tough decisions that could be coming in the future. I think this next board meeting, interestingly, there's a 7-week break between this one and the next one, a little bit longer than 6 weeks we've been accustomed to. But this next board meeting, I think, is going to be pretty critical. I saw a research note this afternoon, Ross, from Gareth Aird from CBA, who says the next meeting could be live. In other words, there could actually be a chance that we might see an interest rate movement at the next board meeting in just 7 weeks' time. So obviously, there's a lot of thoughts now with money markets. You mentioned how they've been moving around a little bit in the past 2 hours or so since the board meeting decision was handed down. It's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks with inflation and with that June CPI number that we'll get at the end of July.